start to turn the page towards next season. Already some additions. The transfer portal closed earlier this week. They've made some coaching adjustments to this team. And here to talk about that, we have student reporter Isaac Edelman, who is at all of the press conferences for Todd Golden, a guy who certainly is a participant. You went to the Final Four. You were part of the national championship run. Isaac, are you done celebrating the fact that these Florida Gators are the national champions?
Well, I think I could speak on behalf of everyone. You want to prolong this win as much as possible, but you also have to look towards next season, and I think that's what the Gators basketball team is doing. You know, a team like UConn got to prolong it for more than 2 seasons, winning back-to-back. I think that's exactly what the Gators want to do this offseason.
Well, and that's certainly, the model of the program. You want to be able to continue to cut down the nets. Possibly we don't see another team cutting down the net until 2027, although we want to hope that the Gators are going to be able to go on a bit of a run here. So we talked about the transfer portal closing. Before we get to the additions that they've made, how big are these losses when you look at this team as they turn the page towards next year?
Well, it's obviously big. You lose 3 of your best players due to graduation. Obviously, you can't replace a guy like Walter Clayton Jr. That's one of the best players in the country, one of the most flashiest players in the country, one of the best shooters in the country. That's obviously a big loss. Don't need to explain that. But guys like Elijah Martin and Will Richard, they're not just guys that get it done on the court. In the locker room and off the court, that's a big loss. And from a camaraderie standpoint, Will Richard's been in the team for a few years, and he knows what it takes to win. He knows what it feels like to lose. And getting over that hump, facing adversity, is something the new guys maybe don't know what to do. And most importantly, those guys knew Todd Golden's system. And the way this team is ran, you don't need to have the best skilled players, right? You look at teams like Duke and Auburn. I thought they had more skilled rosters than the Gators. But the thing that stuck out about this team is that they were coached so well. And the new players will have to adjust to that. But, yeah, those are definitely 3 big losses.
What was the saying? Heart beats talent every time. And this Gator team just continued to show when they were down in games. We thought over the course of the season, when we saw them, get down in games and then come back, we thought that at some point, look, you can't live on that edge forever. It's going to get you at some point. But this team had, you mentioned, the difference maker, Walter Clayton Jr., a guy who, when the moment arrived, he was ready to take that moment and excel in that moment. But I thought you make an interesting point, Isaac, about a lot of people talk about the talent on the court, but that off-the-court chemistry is just something you cannot. It's one of those things, almost lightning in a bottle when it comes to national championship teams, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. You got to do just as good off the court as you do on the court. And, when you lose guys and you replace them, the stats may be replaced, but what you can't replace is the locker room factor. And that's why it's going to be important for guys like Alex Condon and Ruben Chanyulu to come back. Obviously, they put their names in the draft. And they're going to get feedback from NBA coaches and scouts and see, what the best option is for them. But at the end of the day, if they come back, they know what it takes to win games in this system, and they're going to share, some advice with the new guys that come in.
What do you think about some of the other losses, players who've entered the transfer portal?
Denzel Aberdeen's obviously the big one.
Yeah.
That's a guy that has been in this system for a few years. That's a guy that many people thought would take the big leap this year, being the face of the team, expected to be in the starting lineup. And, we don't exactly know what went down behind the scenes, but we know it was a money factor. And that's just the day and age that we're in. It's the transfer portal. Players that love their team don't love their team as much as they love the money. So that's all I could say.
That's fair. That's fair about that. So that means that, now we get some new players coming in. Xavier Lee, obviously, the headliner. The transfer portal closed on Tuesday. Did you expect there to be maybe 1 or 2 more additions, or are you satisfied with what you saw in terms of the portal and that Lee's basically the only guy right now?
Yeah, well, the key word is right now. The Gators are obviously still working to fill their final roster spots. Xavier Lee is obviously the big name, and that's a guy that is flashy. Obviously we don't care about flashiness. We care about winning games. But Xavier Lee is gonna have a big spotlight. Just the way he plays. Fantastic shooter, very flashy when it comes to ball handling, and he creates separation. That's something Walter Clayton did. That's going to be, your leading scorer this year, but you can't just have him. You got to replace Aberdeen. They did that today with A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's the brother of Isaiah Brown, a guy that Todd Golden really has talked about last year. He didn't get much playing time, but Golden kept on bringing up his name in the midweek media availability, so you got to think that he's going to do a lot this year. And now he's with his brother, A.J. Brown, coming from Ohio, averaged over 13 points per game. So, we'll see what happens, but Xavier Lee is going to be the big name. I think the Gators need to get a big man in the transfer portal, though.
C.J. Ingram, another name we heard this week, the son of Cornelius Ingram, who's a two-sport athlete here at UF and is now the head coach of Hawthorne's high school football team. And so, obviously there's some family lineage here as C.J. Ingram comes to the Gators.
Yeah, C.J. Ingram's not the only incoming freshman. It's also Alex Lloyd. The interesting thing about the Gators team that just won the national championship, they didn't have any freshmen with playing time. Now, I'm not saying you need to have a team like Duke where 3 of your starters are freshmen, but you look at teams across the country, you usually have a freshman playing, right? You don't need to have them in the starting lineup like Duke did, but you don't even have a freshman making an impact. This year, that's going to be different. C.J. Ingram and Alex Lloyd are guys that are going to get minutes. Who knows, by the end of the season, if they take a big leap, one of them could be inserted into the starting lineup.
And Ingram, of course, when we see him come in, he's coming in from Montverde. So he joins the program there, one of the new additions. Some interesting coaching moves that the Gators have made as well. You have they promoted Director of Basketball Strategy and Analytics, Jonathan Sapphire, to assistant coach. Yeah. This is a guy who's been given a lot of credit for using analytics and data to help build this Gators roster.
Yeah, I mentioned how this team is well coached. It's important to have a great coaching staff. And Todd Golden loves to see assistant coaches moving on. Obviously, the Gators had 2 coaches that moved on to head coaching positions. And that's something you want to see in your program. Obviously, you hate to see coaches leave, and you have to fill that gap. But the Gators filled that gap. Another coaching move that they did is hiring NYU coach Dave Klatsky. He's actually the brother-in-law of Hoved, who left to take a head coaching position. And Klatsky's a guy that got the D3 Coach of the Year, led NYU to the national title game in D3. So, that's important. And I think most importantly, Golden wants to have a good coaching staff that he's familiar with. And all of these guys have been through the same coaching tree. Sapphire was with Golden at San Francisco. So it's important to have that camaraderie, like I said earlier.
Klatsky 68-16. Yeah, in his time at NYU. So certainly a guy who knows some success, who comes into this Gator program. So when you look at it now, we're still obviously in the throes of winning a national championship, but how realistic is it to have the expectations that this team can repeat as national champions?
Well, you get spoiled, so whether the expectations are there, that's definitely what fans want from the Gators. At the end of the day, they have a good roster right now, but they need to focus on that bench. Depth wins in March Madness. That's why the Gators won the Natty. And, they're going to have to get another big man to play with Micah Hanlockton off the bench. Obviously, the assumption is that Alex Condon's going to come back. Ruben Chanyelu is going to come back. So you have basically 3 big men in the lineup, Thomas Houck, Condon, and Chanyelu, and you have Hanlockton off the bench. I know Hanlockton struggled this year coming off that injury, but he has a whole summer to ramp up. Yeah. He's going to get back to his 2023 form, and he could be one of the best backup big men in the SEC. But you can't just have one backup big man, right? You have Condon and Chanyelu. You can't just insert Hanlockton into that starting lineup, into that bench. So you got to get a backup.
When you look at this team as they head into 2025/26 and this basketball season, obviously winning the national championship, they weren't in the top 25 when the season started last year. Where do you expect them to be when the season starts this coming year?
I expect them to be around 15 because they have the firepower, right? But you can't be top 10 right away because there's going to be a lot of question marks around this team. And the number one thing that people that make rankings hate is question marks. They'll always make those question marks.
As someone who makes rankings, right, Isaac? You make rankings, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah. But no, at the end of the day, Walter Clayton is going to be in everyone's head. You're not going to get him back this year. So you're going to hope Xavier Lee is going to be the reason that the Gators are still ranked so high.
And he's just Walter Clayton's he's a once-in-a-generation type of guy.
Yes.
He's one of those guys that you're just not going to get all the time. Isaac Edelman joining me here on This Week in Gator Sports to talk Gator basketball. Thanks, Isaac. Great to have you along. Hey, don't forget, Gator Sports all weekend long.